The thing about propaganda is it always returns to the same tools: deflection, dishonesty, and gaslighting. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a follow-up video to address some scholarly and civil comments, questions, and curiosities raised in my previous video about the term Yoruba as an ethnonym not appearing in Ahmad Baba's 1615 manuscript. Then this guy responded. He responded with this catastrophic, flawed logic, and I actually felt the need to react before he turns my comment session into a Caligula after party. But before I respond to his naively laughable comment, let me tell you who this fanatic is. Although faceless, he goes by the name Professor Olabola, or simply the Olabola, across his social media handles. His Ife-centric loyalists consider him to be the most educated and knowledgeable human alive. How do I know this? Because every Dick and Harry would always ask you to debate him, even if all you did was sneeze. And all this mumbo-jumbo, mumbala mumbe propaganda porn about Ile-Ife as the supreme birthplace of humanity, many Ife-centric Yoruba are parroting and regurgitating. Everything they are saying, everything they know, basically rests on the believability of this single faceless professor. No facts, no evidence, just on a single pathetic, you get the idea. You see, it's one thing to be misinformed, and it's another thing to be disingenuous, dishonest, and make misinformation one's life's mission. Just read his comment. The name Benin, given to some Edos by the Yoruba, didn't appear in any writing until recently. What we have in the 1500s is Beny. You see, this comment right here is a textbook example of gaslighting, historical revisionism, and an unfortunate case of intellectual dishonesty masquerading as confidence. You see, to be honest, I knew it. I was expecting this. After I posted my video interrogating the dubious claims about the name Yoruba as an ethnonym in Ahmad Baba's 1615 manuscript, I knew the Ife-centric chief whip would eventually crawl in. I'm not talking about the little chihuahua, that's Awa, that's always ready to bark as if someone stole her bone. No. But guess what? He didn't disappoint. He came, and you can see his comment. But instead of addressing the actual topic, the forged and reinterpreted Arabic text he himself once twisted into Orioba and Uroba, he suddenly worried about how the name Benin was spelt in the 1500s. What a clownish move. Now, let me say this emphatically clear. I know he knows what he wrote here is not true. I know he knows that. I know he knows the truth. I also know he is too dishonest and disingenuous to admit it. The reality is that he knows the facts, but he always leaves them out on purpose because bringing those facts into his conversations would make his alamajiris think. And that is the last thing a person like him wants. He doesn't want his people to think. So let me be clear. This response is not for him. This video is for my people, Edo people, Africans, and any curious mind out there who might read his comment and mistakenly think it was deep. Deep. So let's address his absurd claim that Benin didn't appear until recently. and that we only have Beny or Beni in the 1500s, as if spelling variation somehow erases identity. So let's give him a brief masterclass in precolonial documentation, something I suspect he's not used to, something he can't relate with, since his propaganda thrives in Oro mythology and 20th century ethnogenesis. Let's educate those he's misleading. You know, in precolonial European text, Benin appears in many forms. In João de Barros' 1552 Décadas da Ásia, Barros writes about earlier Portuguese voyages from the 15th century and references Benin on page 32 as Beny without the N, Beni. Now, although this book, the first volume, was published in 1552, Barros was referring to explorations starting as early as 1469, but it was published in 1552. Also, in the first printed edition of Gomes Zurara's Crónica do Descobrimento e Conquista da Guiné, which appeared in 1841, on the introduction page 12 of the document, Benin is referenced twice as Beni once and Benin, Benin. Now, it's important to also note that the manuscript itself, though published in 1841, was composed around 1453 during the lifetime of Prince Henry the Navigator. Then, in Esmeralda de Situ Urbis by Duarte Pacheco Pereira, he mentions Portuguese expeditions to the Kingdom of Benin around 1485, led by João Afonso da Vieiro. He writes Beny, Beny, Benin, Benim, on page 111. On page 113, he repeats Beny, Beni, Benin, that is Benin, Benin, or Benim. However, on page 15, he writes Benin, Benin, as it is spelled today. What about Offeldapper's 1668 description of Africa? He refers to it as Benin and Benin on multiple pages. Ferdinand Ludewig Römer in 1760 also uses Benin, Benin, on multiple pages. And the list goes on. You see, Benin wasn't just referenced in books, but even in maps. Now, here's a 1548 map by Giacomo Gastaldi. You see, Benin Regnum is there. Here's another 1766 map by Thomas Page. You see, Benin is there. Binin is there. And here's the most interesting, an 1834 map that didn't just reference Benin, but also Oedo. Let me zoom in. You see? And many more. Beny, Benim, Beny, Benim, Benin. These are not contradictions. They are spelling conversions across different European languages, documenting the same kingdom, the same civilization. And unlike the term Yoruba, the name Benin was already attached to a real existing political entity when it was documented, and the kingdom remained the same. Benin was already a power by the time the Portuguese first encountered it in the late 1400s. In fact, it was so structured that the first Oba the British met in 1553 spoke in Portuguese. Römer himself wrote in 1760 that Benin was an empire. And this was long before anyone ever claimed the term Yoruba as a unifier. So if Benin existed when it was spelt Beny, Beny, what did Yoruba represent in 1615 when it was written as Yoruba with no vowels, no explanation, and surrounded by other non-Muslim enslavable names? But he, in his desperate bid to elevate Ife's mythos, now wants to discredit centuries of documented history of another people just because it doesn't suit his script. He's demanding that data bend to his dogma. You see? So when this professor tries to dismiss the name Benin because one form of it was misspelled Beny, you must ask, does he know all this? Of course he does. But dishonesty is his trade. And this isn't scholarship. It's narcissism parading as pride. But let's get to the real irony. You see, this guy, yes, this same guy, the one crying over Beni, was busy not too long ago spreading a series of fabricated interpretations of Ahmad Baba's work. He posted these fake linguistic breakdowns on his Twitter page, Yoruba, Orioba, all in a desperate attempt to claim the Arabic text meant Yoruba all along, even though the actual Arabic reads Yoruba, Yarba, without any sign of Oba or Uru. He even claims Irba in this document is how Yoruba would be transcribed using simple Arabic letters. And all his followers, all his gullible followers, his alamajiris, they hailed him. But let's bust that myth. Irba in Baba's document is made up of one, an alif with a kasra, which produces the E sound. Two, a ra with a sukun, which means there is no vowel after the R, a glottal stop, R. Three, then there is a ba with a fatha, which produces the sound ba. Lastly, four, a final alif that lengthens the ba sound into ba. So the phonetic output of this Arabic word is irba. Nothing even close to Uruba. You see, if anyone were to dubiously claim that irba is a reference to Yoruba or Uruba, they would be making a false or forced comparison. And it's textbook propaganda. That's not analysis. That's astrology with a sprinkle of propaganda. I hope those of you with open minds can see how this guy is misleading his gullible followers. And now that the manipulation is exposed, instead of engaging the points honestly, this dude moves to discredit Benin's history, which he's obviously obsessed with. You see, these people gaslight you in broad daylight. I never mentioned Yoruba ethnonym until I was shown a book claiming that Benin is a Yoruba civilization. He posted this document. He posted this. Read the caption. Go to the comment section. You see, I never touched their history until they started encroaching on mine. Now that I'm questioning their claims using primary Arabic manuscript and actual precolonial sources, they say I'm trying to divide Yoruba or that I hate Yoruba. That's not critical. That's gaslighting. And you all know it. And no, I won't be silent. We didn't start this, but we will finish it. We don't go around trying to rewrite other people's history. But if you bring yours into ours, don't be surprised if we ask questions. So to those watching this, always remember, propaganda only thrives when people are too afraid to speak. But we are not afraid. We are the Edos. We do not cower. Not now, not ever. We are defending our history and African history from being swallowed by ego, superiority complex, and revisionism masquerading as unity. And if you think your loud repetition of borrowed names, Oromia, Ovien, 3 local governments, if you think they count as historical evidence, then you need to do an overhaul in your brain. Beni, Benin, Benim existed before Yoruba, no matter how it was spelled. And I hope he doesn't flatter himself thinking that this was a clash of view, because it wasn't. It was a clash between research and reaction, evidence and emotion. Because outside these comment sections, history still remembers who the word wrote about and who was written in by missionaries and translators. Benin was already an empire when they were still debating what to call themselves. And history, not hashtags, will always reveal the truth. So to the Ife-centric propagandist, I say, I look forward to your next thesis. Hopefully, this time it will come with sources other than your Twitter timeline. Anyways, I got to go now. I have a research to make and a video to shoot. So, peace.